PNR Networks is a member of Patreon. Show your love for our shows by joining our ongoing fundraising campaign and get some fantastic perks in return. Check it out and become a Patreon sponsor. You can sign up at patreon.com, patreon.com/PNR Networks. And thanks for your support.
This podcast is a member of the Blueberry Network. Blueberry. No E's. That's Blueberry, BLUBRRY.com. Blueberry.com.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
It's Kim versus TC in the battle of the lists.
My list is better.
My list is better.
My list is better.
No, it's not. My list is better.
Kim or TC, who has the better list? From Subject Cinema, this is Front Row 5 and 10 with Kim Brown and TC Kirkham.
Hey everybody, did you miss us? We're back! We are back here on Front Row 5 and 10, brought to you by the good people that bring you Subject Cinema. That would be me and him, the me being a returning Kim Brown.
Jeez, take a breath. And the him being the returning TC Kirkham.
Yes, we're back! We're back.
Which
is much nicer than our fronts.
Yes. We've been away for a while.
Yes.
Since September. So this is going to be our season premiere.
Yep.
Of our new season.
Woo!
And we're coming back with lists that we've got for you. All different types of lists from any type of list you want us to count down. Although we never hear from you. You never write, you never call, you never send us suggestions, and you can win a prize. Give us an idea for a list to do on the show. You get your name on the website, you get your name on the show, you get the name on everything we got, and you get a prize of some sort. I don't know what yet, but we'll give it to you. Write us at frontrow@pnrnetworks.com and give us an idea for a list.
Yep.
This is your list we're kicking things off with that we were supposed to do months ago.
Yes. Our list of each of us have our list of our top 10 favorite British TV shows.
Yep.
And
plus runners up.
Plus runners up or
Lots
honorable mentions or however you want to word it. Now these aren't, these may completely differ from your lists. We hope they do.
Your mileage may vary.
These are just British TV shows that have a really special place in our hearts, and we're going to explain where in order and why. But we do have some honorable mentions. My honorable mentions would be Sherlock.
I thought that was going to be on your top 10.
Yeah, it almost was, but I couldn't move anything.
Got Benedict Cumberbatch in it.
I know. I'm sorry, what?
Mr. Cumberbatch.
I'm back. I'm here. A show called The Good Life, which was, I loved that show. I thought it was hilarious. And The Benny Hill Show. Yeah. So those are my runners-up.
My runners-up, I have 6 of them.
Okay.
The Saint, the original show with Roger Moore. Loved that. Count Dracula, Cosgrove Hall spinoff of one show that's in my top 10. Coming from when was that on? Late 80s, early 90s?
I think so. Yeah.
Monty Python's Flying Circus, one of the greatest sketch comedies of all time. Top of the Pops, Britain's answer to American Bandstand. Love that. The Naked Chef, Jamie Oliver's original cooking show. I like all of his stuff, but that one was always better than the other ones, except maybe for 15-minute meals, which CBS ran on their, what is that called, Saturday morning? What do they call that block of shows?
The edutainment stuff, yeah.
I only like that mostly because his buddy, Nina Cherry's Buffalo Stance, was used as his theme song. And finally, Robin of Sherwood from the great Richard Carpenter with Michael Prey seasons 1 and 2 and Jason Connery season 3.
I tried to get into that show at the time, but I remember thinking this is weird as hell.
It is weird. But, it's a very weird version of Robin Hood.
Yeah.
It's probably better than the one Taron Egerton just started.
Well, we'd have to ask someone who had seen it, but we can't find anybody.
No, I know. So we're up to the top 10. And this is her list, so she gets to start.
Okay. My number 10 is a British comedy called Open All Hours. This was a show that it actually was brought back in a new iteration fairly recently.
Yeah.
And this show just cracked me up to no damn end. The show was about a grocer in a town called Balby, which is a suburb of Doncaster, which is in Yorkshire, South Yorkshire part of England. And I probably said all of those names wrong, and I apologize greatly.
Isn't it Yorkshire?
Yorkshire? I'm not sure. The owner of this shop is a man named Arkwright, who never met a penny he couldn't squeeze, you know. He is a penny-pinching miser, I don't know how else to word it, who makes it his life's mission that if anybody comes into his shop, they don't leave without buying something, and probably buying more than they actually intended to buy. He runs the store along with his nephew Granville, who was the son of Arkwright's late sister, and a questionable parentage on the dad's side of things. This show is, I think it's aged well because I've watched a lot of them on YouTube and I still find it hilarious. Some of it you kind of go, wow, you couldn't get away with that stuff now. But Ronnie Barker and David Jason, who played Arkwright and Granville respectively, had this really crazy chemistry. They were so funny together. You almost really could believe they were blood relations because nobody else gets to talk to you like that. I thought this show was a scream, an absolute frickin' riot. So my number 10, Open All Hours.
It didn't make my list. I like that show, but it was not one of my all-time favorites. Mm-hmm. Ronnie Barker and David Jason have good chemistry practically everything they do with whoever they're working with because they're just so good at what they do.
Yeah.
My number 10 is, I think, the definitive portrayal of this character, and I've always loved it, and it's just a great show, whether they were doing the hour-long version or the 2-hour movies, which they finally got through and done with. I haven't seen any of the last few, because they were on cable and internet stuff rather than proper TV. My number 10 is Agatha Christie's Poirot, starring the awesome David Suchet as Hercule Poirot.
Yep.
The fastidious Belgian detective. There have been so many people that have played this role. Excuse me, I got a cough. I still have this awful cough. Nobody has played it quite that way.
No.
Now, oddly enough, my mother was a huge fan of the books, and she didn't like the way Suchet played the character. And I'm like, are you kidding?
I don't get where she was coming from.
She liked Peter Ustinov. And Peter Ustinov, while he was enjoyable as Poirot, I haven't seen Kenneth Branagh, but the look is completely wrong.
The look is so wrong.
I just love the way David has great chemistry with his entire cast.
The books made it very clear in the short stories and whatever. Poirot is not a tall man.
No.
Peter Ustinov was
tall,
quite tall,
and a lot larger than Poirot was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So, I think this show deserves a second look if you haven't seen it. I don't know if it's on cable anymore. I know Acorn TV was running the new ones, but it's a great show. Agatha Christie's Poirot, my number 10.
Okay. My number 9 is actually a show you've already mentioned. My number 9 is Monty Python's Flying Circus. You often hear the phrase, something, whatever it is, a movie, a book, a play, whatever, defies description. And a lot of times that term gets just kind of tossed around, and something does you can describe it, it's just really frickin' weird, and that's the definition for Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Weird? Really?
This stuff was completely so out there to the point where I was like, how did they get some of this stuff on the air? Because people complain American TV is repressive. Holy cow, the BBC. Really? But you had this show with you had all these elements to it. You had, moments where it was, satire. You had moments with animated segments and all kinds of comedy that sometimes you didn't get for at least 5 minutes after you saw it. And there were a few times when you were sitting there going, what the F did I just watch?
Yeah.
But you still laughed at it.
Yeah.
And you had, these amazing people doing this show. Graham Chapman, John Cleese, Michael Palin, Terry Jones, Eric Idle, Terry Gilliam. It was just, I remember watching, the thing is, I remember watching Monty Python, and I was way too young to be watching this show.
I was too the first time I saw it.
Way too young.
10.
And they were running it on PBS of all places. And I remember watching it, and I was like, I don't get it, but I really like it because it's adults being so silly. I fell in love with it when I was a kid, and I would still laugh my head off at the Dead Parrot sketch now. My number 9, Monty Python's Flying Circus.
My number 8 is one of those discoveries that you watch and you're not sure who it's meant for. Is it meant for kids, little kids? Is it meant for their older brothers? Is it meant for their college age relatives? Because the humor in it, in many ways, resembled what would later be put together in America later that decade in Animaniacs, or actually in the next decade in Animaniacs, and several other of the Warner Brothers output in the early 90s. It was one of those things where you knew something, if you were with your friends and you used a certain catchphrase from it, you could get a good look out of them. Like one night when we were playing D&D, we were just meeting the new DM that we had. His name was Jim. Our friend Stacy introduced him to him. We got kind of crazy, and things were kind of out of touch, and Jim was like losing control, and I finally looked at Kim and I went, Penfold, shush. I thought Jim was going to fall off his chair. He just stiffened and like, what? Because he didn't realize we were Danger Mouse fans. I'm going back to the original. I like the new version that's on Netflix. It's not bad, but it's not the original.
It's not
David
the classic.
Jason, Terry Scott, doing the voices of Danger Mouse and Penfold. It is one of the funniest cartoons ever made, and it's just like the stories are just so ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And I can.
Well, it's an anthropomorphic mouse spy. What do you want? Gritty realism?
It ran 11 seasons, I think.
Something like that. Some
10
crazy
or 11 seasons.
number,
The new series, I think, just ran 2. But it was there was satire, there was humor. The jokes were above. I mean, a lot of jokes, particularly those involving Danger Mouse's dating life, went straight over the little kids' heads.
Leave Fifi out of this.
Yeah, exactly. Engaged? Yeah. It still makes me laugh myself hysterically. So next time I want to have a petite party, I'm going to have my pterodactyl in. Number 9, Danger Mouse.
You jerk. Okay, I gotta get serious here. Okay. Number 8 on my list is actually a show that, out of the two of us, only I'm into. I don't think you've ever actually watched an episode with me, which is a shame, because I think if you did, you'd actually really get into it. My number 8 is Midsummer Murders.
I've not seen it. I've seen bits and pieces here and there.
Midsummer Murders, which is summer, S-O-M-E-R, not summer like summertime.
Midsummer is a town, isn't it?
It's actually an area of England. Okay. It's I think the best way to put it, I was going to say the best way to put it in American terms would be county, I would guess.
Or parish if you're in Louisiana.
Yeah. Based on the Inspector Barnaby books written by Caroline Graham, which I had actually read, Chief Inspector Barnaby, excuse me, which I had actually read the first book before I realized there were even any episodes of the TV show. And I fell in love with the characters. I was like, this is going to be awesome. And it really is. It's your standard police procedural, although it does have moments of humor, which is very dark, not like Addams Family dark, but, dark enough that you're just kind of like, wow, really? In America, it would have been too broad, but when stuff gets said with that British, those wonderful British accents of varying degrees, it's just, I love this show. I haven't seen the later ones where they change the main character, which is fine. But the ones that I've seen are with DCI Tom Barnaby, who is played by John Nettles, and I love this show. I'm a sucker for a good mystery, you know that, and I just love to watch these and try and figure out who did it, which I never do, because I always get distracted by something else because I have the attention span of a house cat, and I admit it, but I just like this show. It feels British, which sounds weird, but what can I say?
Right.
My number 8, Midsummer Murders.
I've never gotten into very many of the British cop shows, other than Poirot. I don't know why. I never have. I liked the thing that Diana Rigg did that one season.
Mrs. Bradley.
Yeah, those were
yeah.
fun. And I watched.
That's more of a private detective,
right? Yeah,
though,
those
not
are
really
the more,
a procedural.
That's where I'm going. I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever been a procedural. I liked procedurals from Britain as much as I do. I'm not into those anymore. My number 8 you've already mentioned, and it has to be on the list somewhere, and it's at least on your honorable mentions, because there just is nobody else. But when God made Benny Hill, He broke the mold. Thank God. Benny Hill show was one of the funniest things ever. We should have grabbed them when they came out on DVD because they're really hard to find now.
I know.
And yes, the humor is disgusting by today's standards, and bawdy and racist and everything else in many ways. But Benny was just brilliant, and I mean, just his comedy, his sense of timing, some of the stuff that he did was so outlandish, and yet, I mean,
I have to be honest. A lot of people might be a little bit pissed off right now because of this, but what I liked about it, I mean, you had the whole chasing after pretty girls thing, and that just didn't really interest me very much.
No.
What I liked was the wordplay.
Oh yeah,
and that's what interested me, and that's what cracked me up.
He was great, particularly with Henry McGee.
Yeah.
At doing that kind of stuff, and it was just really something, and especially as Fred Scuttle, which I think is the best known character he did.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, a lot of times when he would do stuff where it was, him dealing with women and stuff, usually the women were the ones that got their own back at the end of it. It was usually the men that wound up looking like idiots.
He had a great cast surrounding him from various times, including Henry McGee, Bob Todd, little Jackie Wright. I can't remember her name. The lady who plays Violet on.
I know who you mean. It's
Anna Dawson.
Anna Dawson,
and others. And he was just. He was one of a kind, and he was also known to be one of the kindest men that ever walked in entertainment in Britain. Number 8, The Benny Hill Show.
Okay, it's funny because I didn't do this on purpose, but number 8 and my number 7 are back-to-back mysteries, although they're very different time frames. My number 7 is Father Brown.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to be on your list too, because I know you like that.
I really, really like this show. They're based on.
But again, that one's more of a detective than it is a procedural.
It is. There are police involved.
Yeah.
There are police involved. Usually they're off to the side going, somebody get this guy out of here, because I'm pretty sure it's illegal to slug a priest. These are based on the short stories by J.K. Chesterton about Father Brown, a priest. In the TV series, he is a Roman Catholic priest. I'm not sure if he is that in the short stories or not. He is the parish priest of the village of Kembleford, which is in the Cotswolds, and he is the priest at St. Mary's, and he always seems to find himself either showing up after someone's died so he could perform last rites, or he's there when someone does die and he can perform last rites. The thing I find so fascinating about Father Brown is that, when you think about your average amateur detective character, your Jessica Fletchers, your those kind of characters like that, which I'm not knocking, I love them too. Their whole thing is, to catch the bad guy, to try and save innocent people and stuff like that. The thing I find so interesting about Father Brown is that he is just as concerned with saving the soul of the guilty person as he is with everybody else in the immediate area.
Right.
He truly does believe no one is completely, for the most part, no one is completely irredeemable. And that's really amazing. And the cast is just wonderful. I wish I could go through absolutely everybody. Unfortunately, I can't. But I do want to bring up Mark Williams, who plays Father Brown. Mark Williams, probably best known to American fans as Weasley Patriarch Arthur. And also, I'd like to bring up Sorsha, I hope I said that right, Cusack, who plays Mrs. McCarthy. A church lady she's a nice person, but she's also got a tongue that can slash you to bits if she wants to, and she could probably wither a plant with a look if she gets mad.
Right.
But I love the characters. I love the setting. I just love this show to bits. So my number 7, Father Brown.
My number 7 came in lower than I thought it would, but I've got to be honest, it does fit right here because I do like all the other shows above it a little bit better. But it's so good, and I never get sick of watching it, even though it is just... There's only 5 seasons, I think, or 6, and you could watch them over and over again, and they're still as funny, no matter how many times you see Hyacinth Bucket get her comeuppance.
It's Bouquet.
It's always funny. Oh, it's Bouquet. My number 6, keeping up appearances, with the incredible Patricia Routledge as Hyacinth Bouquet. Unfortunately, we just lost Clive Swift a couple weeks ago, who played her husband Richard, and... Her errant relatives that she didn't like to admit to, her sisters Daisy and Rose, and also Daisy's husband Onslow, and of course Violet, the one with the Mercedes and Room for a Pony. This show is so funny, and it's because Pat Routledge is just phenomenal playing this character the way she does. She makes her so real that it's hard to believe that this woman isn't somebody from your neighborhood. And I mean, it really is. Hyacinth is about the most insufferable person on the planet, and yet you still like her. She's still kind and friendly.
She's not a bad person.
She's not a bad person.
She's an insufferable person. She's an insufferable person, but she's not a bad person. Oh, yeah.
And her never-seen son Sheridan off camera, too. Yep. The cast was just marvelous. In addition to those, you had Jeffrey Hughes as Onslow. I've forgotten her name, and I have her book, too.
Judy Cornwall.
Judy Cornwall as Daisy. Shirley Stelfox first, then Mary Millar as Rose. Anna Dawson as Violet. Josephine Tucson as her next-door neighbor, Elizabeth. And... David, I've forgotten his last name, as Elizabeth's brother Emmett, who moves in with her at the beginning of the second season. And the chemistry between Hyacinth and Emmett is so funny. I mean,
Griffin,
it really is.
David Griffin.
Thank you. And there's also the priest and his wife, the vicar and his wife that are on every now and then. I mean, I don't understand when this show came to America that it did not get... I mean, because back in the 60s and 70s, British shows that were imported to America, particularly those that came on the networks, were nominated for Emmys. In this day and age, if that had been a cable show, they would have been cleaning up Emmys.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that funny.
Number
7, keeping up appearances.
I was actually sitting here when you were describing the show that you just described. I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, don't tell me we've already matched up on one, because I will just fall over laughing, but we didn't.
Okay.
But it is a British comedy. It's a well-known, revered British comedy from way back in the day. My number 6 is Are You Being Served? Are You Being Served, which mostly takes place in Grace Brothers department store. Go ask your parents what a department store is, kids, if you're not sure. And the goings on therein with the members of the gentlemen's staff and the ladies' staff, who at the beginning of the series, there's a big kerfuffle because they have to share a floor. It used to be the men's clothes were on this floor, but now the women's clothes are on this floor as well. And there's all kinds of, concern.
Fall and hoop-to-do and
all that.
Hoopla!
Thank you, SpongeBob. The characters are what make this show, and the writing, which is brilliant, and I don't know...
You could never get away with 90% of what they did on this show.
No.
Ever, now.
I do not know how these people said these lines without cracking up laughing. every single time. Although they did crack up, we did see it a few times.
Usually at the very tail end.
Yeah,
of the show,
usually.
Yeah.
You had, the very vocal, and she is unanimous in that, Mrs. Slocum, played by the glorious Molly Sugden, she of the ever-changing hair color. Miss Brahms.
And her pussy Tittles.
And her pussy named Tittles. That's a cat. Calm down. We're not going into that kind of a show.
I think they know that, hon.
It's not that kind of a show,
Yep.
sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Brahms and Mr. Granger, Mr. Lucas, and of course, Mr. Humphreys, played by John Inman, and Captain Peacock, and various other staff members. I mean, it's completely farcical.
Yep.
And it's hilarious. It is just fall down funny. They did.
I actually prefer British sitcoms of that style
I
to
do.
American
Me
ones.
too. I completely do.
I mean, it's coming up on my list, so I'll talk a little bit about it too. But
They actually did a follow-up series that in this country was called Are You Being Served Again? Because they figured that Americans were too dumb to get if they called the show Grace and Favor. And they're probably not wrong.
no, they're not.
And it was...
I think it was actually that title everywhere except Britain. And maybe Australia.
And it was still screechingly funny.
It was, but in a different way.
In a
'cause
different
it was a
way.
different situation.
It was a different situation. It was more a fish out of water
Yeah.
kind of situation, but it was the same characters for the most part, and we loved all of them. So my number 6, Are You Being Served?
I got to tell this story now that you brought this up. I was doing taxes yesterday, and I do them online with TurboTax, and they were checking my identity, and they come up, okay, well, we're going to give you this list of things so we can make sure you're you. Which one of these addresses have you lived at? You pick one of them, or none of the above. Which one of these department stores have you recently opened a credit card with? The bottom one was Grace Brothers.
No.
I'm like, are you serious?
Shut
I'm
up!
like, oh God.
The funny thing, actually, I need to tell this one. When we were actually lucky enough to have gone to Great Britain back in '94, and we were in a pretty large store over there at one point. I don't remember which the name of it, was, and we're just kind of wandering around and stuff. And somebody actually said, "Are you being served?" And I just kind of looked over at you, just with the eyes got a little bit wider, and it was like, holy crap, they actually
It wasn't even that big of a store.
No, I know, but it was
more of a smaller store, yeah.
But it was like, holy crap, they actually say that over here. And it was just one of those kind of weird situations. It was hilarious.
My number 6 is on this list up that high because I have been watching it since I was a little tot. And it ran for like 9 years. And I was like a fan because my mom likes these kind of shows. And when it came to America, it was on ABC for 3 seasons. And my mother always watched it. And in the early 90s, A&E ran them from the very beginning, so eventually I got to see all the seasons that were never here. Only one person was in that show all the way through the show, and that was John Steed, played by Patrick McNee. Of course, number 6, The Avengers. Throughout the years, he was there was the Doctor, played by Ian Hendry. I can't remember his name in the first season. Then Kathy Gale, played by not Ian Hendry. What was his name? That's the other guy. That was the guy from the second Saint. Anyway, Kathy Gale was played by Honor Blackman. Then, of course, the luscious Emma Peel, she of the leather outfits, played by Diana Rigg, and I was noticing those at 3. And then Tara King, played by Linda Thorson. And later on in the 70s, the New Avengers had Joanna Lumley and Gareth Hunt in it too. And those were all great. But the original shows, the further along they got, the more wacky they got. They got more and more science fiction oriented and all these crazy weird ass plots. But I love them. And
I do have to ask, did they come up with the Cybermen before Doctor Who's Cybermen or after? Because they actually had Cybermen on their show.
I don't know. I think the Cybermen made their debut with William Hartnell, so probably before.
Oh.
They were before, but I'm not sure. But
I just thought that was weird.
I just always loved this show, and it was just made them all my favorites. But I loved the chemistry, particularly between Patrick McNee and Diana Rigg. They were just terrific together. Linda Thorson was good. She tried her best that last season after Diana left, and they were good together, but the plots were just getting so ridiculous by that point.
And pretty much everybody's seen the pictures of Diana Reagan, the leather bustier outfit with the spiked dog collar and the snake and all that stuff like that.
Diana's known for Game of Thrones, so it's like, okay.
Well, to this generation, to us, she'll always be Emma Peel.
Linda Thorson did a great show in the mid-90s, late 80s, early 90s called The Bronx Zoo. If you've never seen it, it was terrific. She starred in it with Ed Asner, and she played I think she was the superintendent of schools in New York. And she was really good on that. It was nice to see her again. She still does stuff all the time, too. Number 6, The Avengers.
Okay. Number 5 on my list, I'm relatively certain is not on yours, because I know I'm very fond of this show, and you've always been a little bit about it.
Okay.
It's one of the shortest shows on my list at 2 seasons and 12 episodes. But I could watch those in a marathon and probably just laugh till I cried. My number 5 is Fawlty Towers. I see what I mean.
I've never been impressed with that show. I just find him so unlikable.
You're supposed to. That's
it's
the
not
point.
Unlikable funny. It's unlikable, unwatchable X-Pac heat. Unwatchable to me.
Ow.
So I'm sorry. I love John, but I just can't stand that show.
Holy cow. The trials and tribulations of Fawlty Towers, mostly brought on by the owner of said, Basil Fawlty, married unhappily to his wife Sybil. I really don't blame him, because Sybil's kind of a bitch.
Well, wouldn't you be if you had to put up with him?
Pretty much. You watch their marriage, and that really does hammer home that old saying that murder's cheaper than divorce. But
I could have been out by now.
And all of the crazy things that happen in this small hotel in the town of Torquay. And the thing that I always thought was completely bat guano nuts was the fact that John Cleese, who is utterly incredible as Basil, based the character of Basil Fawlty on a real person, on a real hotel owner. And I was like, sweet mother of pearl, someone actually existed like this who was in the service industry? Are you kidding me? You have all of and this is another show that you're like, oh man, that wouldn't fly nowadays, especially with the character of Manuel, played by Andrew Sachs. Manuel was a waiter from Barcelona whose English was
broken, to say the least.
Well, I was going to go with limited, because I was
same thing.
I was trying to be nice.
Well, I wasn't.
No, it's, and the fact that he tends to take a lot of physical abuse from Basil, and Polly, probably the only sane person in the whole damn place, who was just absolutely wonderful, played by, at the time, John's wife, Connie Booth. They were married at the start of it. I want to bring up, Sybil was played by, Prunella Scales. It's another one of these bedroom farce shows. Sometimes it was literally a bedroom farce. And I'm sorry, this show, I would actually laugh until I was in pain. And I love it. I still love it. My number 5, Fawlty Towers.
I'm so glad. I was so scared you were going to say The Young Ones and I'd have to hurt you.
You can't see me, but I'm scribbling things. No, I'm not. That's actually not on my list.
Number 5 has had a long life on British television. Several, actually. What are we up to? 12? 13? There's...
Are you putting me on?
What?
Number 5?
Yeah. Why? Wouldn't you think it would be...
Damn.
Why, did you think it higher?
Yeah.
No. Number 5 is Doctor Who, both the original and the new show.
Wow.
I have to be honest, I've not really seen a lot of the new show. I've seen most of Christopher Eccleston's, a couple of David Tennant's, 2 or 3 Matt Smiths, and I haven't seen any of Peter Capaldi or Jodie Whittaker. I love Jodie, though. What I've seen of that character, the way she's playing the character, I love. I go back to the classic Who, and I mean, we got a chance. I hope, I haven't checked the tickets. I forgot to check the tickets. Logopolis is coming to Fathom Events next month. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows Tom Baker, but my favorite Doctor of all of the originals, I still have a fondness for Peter Davison. I really like him, with Colin Baker a close second.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Colin Baker got the shaft. I mean, I loved his irascible, unpredictable, kind of insane, manic version of the Doctor.
I think
it's not unlike the way David Tennant played it later.
I think the word you're kind of going for there is dick.
Asshole? Yeah. But I liked Colin playing that. I loved the way he played that. I had the good fortune of meeting him at the Doctor Who Con in 1989, 88 in Columbus, Ohio. He was a very sweet man, and nothing like his character on the show, or the character he was known for before that, which was a show called Brothers, where he played a J.R. Ewing type character.
Yeah.
But I love them. I love the originals too. I mean, William Hartnell was awesome, Patrick Troughton, John Pertwee, the whole group of them. Who am I leaving out of the original? Sylvester McCoy and Paul McGann, who had one movie, one shot, but he's done a ton of the Big Finish things. It's just a great show all the way around, and I really think that, I have to admit, I have my favorite companions too. We counted those up once. But, they're all, the show is just a terrific, fun adventure show. Now meant more for adults than for kids. The original show was supposedly a kid's show, and I don't think it was, but they do.
You think that thing that crawled out of that Dalek is supposed to be on a children's show? They were on drugs back then.
It was on a children's show.
Seriously.
56 years now, and still going strong. Dr.
I don't think I've ever screamed in a theater like I did that night. That was just, oh gosh.
Yep.
I'm not a big Whovian. I keep trying. I'm trying and trying and trying. And
you like it enough that you
I like it, and I like it, and I'm learning. It's just for the longest.
It took me a while. I didn't like it when I first saw it. I didn't get it when I lived in Washington. I first saw it when we moved to Ohio in '81, and it was just on the half-hour version every day. I didn't get into it till I started seeing that one of the PBS shows ran the 90-minute versions, and I was able to get into it from that point on, and I became a big fan.
I remember seeing it when I was a young girl, and it was on like the PBS stations, and I was just like, "What the heck is going on?" It was.
That's easy to do, especially when the Tom Baker ones were running.
No kidding.
Alrighty.
All right. So, my number 4 is actually a show that it's a more recent show, and we got into it immediately.
I know what that is.
And we still love it, and we watch it all the time, and we've watched it on Netflix. Thank goodness Netflix carried it, because we were completely not knowing what the hell we were going to do if somebody didn't carry it. Over in England, it's called The Great British Bake Off. Here, my number 4 is called The Great British Baking Show. Now, I don't know if we've ever really mentioned this. I mean, we talked about the fact that we both are we're pretty okay in the kitchen. You love to cook, and I love to bake. So, it works out really well.
We should clarify.
Yeah.
I cook from scratch. She bakes from mixes usually.
Yeah. But I bake with love.
She does. And she always picks good things to make. So.
Yeah. And the thing, that's when I'm allowed in the kitchen most of the time.
Right now, we don't have a kitchen big enough for 2 people.
Well, no, but even if
thank God we didn't get the other apartment, we would have that galley kitchen. It would have been a murder.
But even if we did, you'd be like, "I'm cooking, get out." So, and I know you would. But watching people, these are amateur bakers that come on, and they're supposed to, they're given recipes and what?
A lot of them have turned kind of semi-pro.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Because the world could always use more bakers and people that make good things, because God knows we don't need any more lawyers or generals or any of that other crap.
There's always a use for everybody.
Okay. We'll discuss.
Except maybe politicians.
We'll discuss that off mic. But this show is part of the reason I love this show so much, and part of the reason it's so high on my list, is not just because you're watching people do, all the things that they're doing in the baking contest part. You see people leave, and all the things like that. But it's also because, oh God, it's so different from every other reality show that's on especially in America, where you have people stabbing each other in the back and screwing each other over. This show, everybody helps everybody else when there's something going wrong. People try and help out if people need an extra hand carrying, a bread sculpture that's as big as a small dog or whatever. And it's a great show, and I love.
They all make me sick.
Nice.
I'm sorry. Some of the stuff they do as amateurs, I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know. It's like, wow, you're totally...
it's coming up on my list.
You're totally awesome, and I'm really nauseatingly jealous of you right now. But the other things that I love about this show are the people that they've had as hosts. When we started watching, the hosts were...
For the first 7 seasons, it was Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry.
Mm-hmm. And now it's... Paul Hollywood and Prue Leith. I hope I said that right.
And originally hosted by
Mel and Sue.
Mel Godoyak and
Sue Perkins.
Now it's
Sandy Toskvig and Noel Fielding, and
they're funny as hell.
Okay,
I miss Mel and Sue, but they are great together.
I am going to admit this.
Sandy's a riot.
I am going to admit this right now. As we're recording this, he has no idea what I'm going to say. Hand over my heart. Noel Fielding is one of my favorite people in the whole friggin' planet right now.
He's quite
I
unique.
adore him.
He's kind of like the British version of Carson Kressley.
What?
Well, his mannerisms and the way he thinks and the way he does things. It reminds me a lot of Carson Kressley.
He reminds me of a dark-haired, grown-up Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes.
I don't think he's that bad. Maybe Jason Fox. I don't know.
But I love this show, watching people create these amazing dishes, which I could never create at home.
Yep.
But you watch people do this, and you're like, wow. I mean, if this show inspired anybody to just decide, I'm going to learn how to bake, then that did an awesome thing, because goodness knows the world could always use baking and making things that comes from your heart. Mm-hmm. So my number 4, the Great British Baking Show.
My number 4, you already mentioned, Are You Being Served? I just think this show is one of the funniest things ever to hit television. And I'll give it a little bit more credit than you did. Just run down everybody. In addition to Molly Sugden as Mrs. Slocum, Wendy Richard was Miss Brahms, Frank Thornton, Captain Peacock, John Enman, Mr. Humphreys, Trevor Bannister, Mr. Lucas. I've forgotten his name. That's terrible. Arthur, I can't remember his last name, as Mr. Granger. Arthur Brow, right? Mm-hmm. And Nicholas Smith as Mr. Rumbold. Mm-hmm. Plus, later on, they had other replacements like Mike Barry, and they had the gentleman that played Mr. Tabbs, who was my favorite substitute. James Hayter.
Yes.
And Alfie Bass was good as Mr. Goldberg. Mm-hmm. This show is freaking hilarious. I mean, it's raunchy. It is full of double entendres. And that is what makes I would... Has anybody actually counted how many times Mrs. Slocum brought up her pussy in the entire run of the show? I'm just curious, because I think they did it at least once, maybe twice, in every episode.
Yeah.
It was just, it's just a great show. It's offensive if you're not careful.
Oh yeah, if you're one of those, if you're a very sensitive person, and that kind of humor offends you,
and
why the hell are you listening to this show?
That never kind of got off the ground when they tried to bring it to America. In America, that was called Beans of Boston with John Hillerman, Lorna Patterson, and a few other
Charlotte
people. Charlotte Ray, who was great as the Mrs. Slocum character.
We watched the pilot because we found it on YouTube.
You can find it there, and so are the Australia episodes with John Inman.
Yeah, we watched the pilot, Beans of Boston, and Sweet Caroline. Does that suck?
It's not as bad, though, as the 2 attempts to make Fawlty Towers here, Amanda's by the Sea and Pain. Which you would be. Pain was funny, but I didn't like Amanda's at all.
No.
But whenever they try to do that, unless it's a good show, like Keeping Up Appearances would never work in America.
No.
And neither did Are You Being Served, but the original was great. And Are You Being Served again? Much of the same cast, along with Fleur Bennett as Mavis and Billy. I forgot his last name as her father. Mm-hmm. Mr. Moultard. Great shows, both of them. Are You Being Served? Number 4.
Okay. My number 3 is a show you've already mentioned, and I can't really. I'm going to try and add a little more to Keeping Up Appearances, because I could just heap praise on this show for hours. The thing that makes the adventures of Hyacinth Bouquet, I'm going to say bouquet because I'm going to be nice, that makes it so funny is that you can see stuff going wrong from half a mile down the road.
Oh, yeah.
You know that nothing that she does, all of these attempts of hers to social climb, are going to flop. And you know they're going to flop badly. But the thing that makes Keeping Up Appearances so special, I think, is that when they do flop, you don't point and laugh at Hyacinth. It's not that kind of a show. You do laugh, but it's more kind of a rueful, shake your head, oh, Hyacinth, kind of
exactly.
thing. You're not pointing and laughing and going, oh, ha ha, look at the snob that just fell on her face or whatever. You just kind of shake your head and you're like, oh, that's our Hyacinth.
We first saw this show when we went to Britain.
Yes.
In 94, and we were like, oh my God, when is this coming to America? And a year later it showed up on WGBH, and we've been hooked ever since.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, oh my Lord.
Yeah, absolutely hilarious show. A couple of people you didn't bring up in your
I'm sure
Michael,
there's lots.
The vicar's name was Michael. I don't think we ever found out the name of the vicar's wife.
No, just the vicar's wife.
Jeremy Gittins played
right.
Michael, the vicar. The vicar's wife was played by Marion Barron, who was... I'm like, lady, you do realize your husband has to interact with people, and
yeah,
he's
she was
not...
a jealous
She
one.
was a jealous shrew. I mean, seriously, I'm like, you don't really get it. I mean, well, for me, it was weird when we started watching the show, and I was like, what do you mean his wife? And it was like,
it's a C of E.
Well, see, that's the thing. I was like, you looked at me and you're like, hon, he's a vicar. He's not a priest. I'm like, oh yeah, they do that stuff over there. Sorry.
Can I ask a question going back to Father Brown?
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware that the Catholic Church existed in Britain. Does it still exist there, or is it all C of E?
No, I think it's still there.
Okay, I was just curious. Anyway, go ahead.
No, you can't get rid of us that easily. Once we're in someplace, we ain't leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Also, real quick, I'd like to bring up the gentleman that played Daddy.
Oh yes,
Hyacinth's father.
The cause of many a problem. Sometimes.
Yes, George Webb was the gentleman that played Daddy, who was Hyacinth would say a touch senile in the nicest possible way. Now I realize
he was bat guano crazy.
Oh yeah. I realize
and a dirty old man to boot.
There's that. Obviously, Alzheimer's is a very serious disease. I don't
think he had Alzheimer's. I think he had dementia. There's a difference between the two.
There is a difference.
Yeah.
There is a difference. And I know some people that might be a trigger thing, and they might be like,
clutch
pearls, how dare you make fun of that kind of thing, whatever. But sometimes, you gotta laugh at stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up one other person real quick, because he creeped me out so badly, which was the point. Peter Seller. I think it's Seller, I guess, who played Major Wilton Smythe, a retired military...
Oh, yes, the bucket woman.
Yeah.
What a prize filly she is.
Yeah, this guy was enamored with Hyacinth.
Oh, God knows why.
Yeah, which had the rest of us all going, sweet baby, sweet baby seahorses. Why? But not that Patricia Routledge isn't an attractive lady. She is, but Hyacinth was not exactly the type that would be, the type that would inflame the passions of any man.
He only did 3 episodes, I think, but
he was very
memorable. Yeah.
It was very memorable because I was like, if I saw that dude coming, I would grab my mom and run a mile.
Yeah.
So my number 3, Keeping Up Appearances.
My number 3, also on your list a little bit ago. It's just I can't get enough of it. We both love it. The Great British Baking Show, Great British Bake Off. We still haven't watched the first 3 seasons, which are not available here. This is another show that they have tried to launch in America twice, and while the holiday edition does well enough that ABC keeps renewing it, the first show, The Great American Bake Off with Jeff Foxworthy, went nowhere, and it was great.
It was really interesting,
and that's when we first found it, and then we found the original show, and we've been hooked ever since.
Yep.
Out of the myriad of wonderful people that have been on this show, the one person who still stands out to me from all of the people ever on is the brilliantly funny, talented, and unbelievably good cook, Nadia Hussein, who won season 6, I think. Some of the most creative things she did, the soda pop fountain thing, that was brilliant. And she was always, we loved watching her just for her expressions. She was so afraid that Paul was going to, ream her every time she did something.
Yeah.
And she ended up winning the entire thing. She was just brilliant.
She's
hosted 2 shows since then.
Yeah, she's a wonderful person. Nadia has been a force to be reckoned with on Twitter, and has been,
She's
unfortunately,
brilliant.
has had to deal with some racist asshats.
She dealt with some terrible stuff, and she does it with a smile on her face and a foot kicking some butt.
Yeah, she doesn't back down as well. She shouldn't, because she's a classy
she's
lady.
Very cool. All of them are very cool with their fans online. A lot of them are online, including, I always forget his name, who was on with Nadia, the gentleman that was the anesthesiologist.
Oh, I can't think of his name.
I can't think of his name either.
And
Martha is out there. Nancy, is that her name? That won season 4?
Yeah.
Is out there. A lot of other people, Richard from season 5, and all these great people. And more recently, the most recent season was on Netflix, the most recent 2 seasons, because they changed networks in Britain. And it's still a great show. I've come to like Prue and her oddball choices of jewelry. The woman loves plastic.
Yeah.
That
one necklace
as you
that
said,
looks,
Sandy and Noel are just a
that
riot.
one necklace that looks like it's made out of crayons is really that's a look.
My number 3, The Great British Baking Show.
Okay.
Love that show.
My number 2 most favorite British television show you've mentioned, because come on, you had to be here. My number 2, Danger Mouse.
Wow. That high. I'm impressed.
Well, the reason...
so I know what both of us have at number 1. Then. I had a feeling. Okay.
The reason that Danger Mouse is so high on my list and has such a big place in my heart is when I was watching Danger Mouse back in the day, I was, your average kid. I was going to school, I had my family, I had everything else, and everything seemed to be okay outside.
Yeah.
Inside, not so much. My parents' marriage is dying a slow, painful death in front of me. I don't really know, I don't really know who I am yet. I'm severely bullied at school, and this is back before that stuff was actually taken seriously.
Right, yeah.
And,
I know that feeling.
I'm basically walking around as a pile of angst, daddy issues, self-loathing, and hair. And, welcome to the 80s. And this show made me laugh. At a point in my life when I needed it. Laughter saves people's lives. And I know that sounds like some cornball, hippy-dippy kind of thing, but it's true. And the jokes in this show, some of them were dumb, some of them were just straight up, pratfall, pie in the face kind of humor. And some of them were so clever, that they went right over the little kids' heads and smacked their older brothers and sisters right between the eyes.
A couple of the writers of Animaniacs actually gave shout-outs to Danger Mouse as being an inspiration because of their off-the-wall humor. And, when you have the Mark V flying literally off the film into the side of and they're just sitting there off the film reel. That was a really... clever joke.
That's taking a half a ton of C4 and just snuggling it up against the fourth wall, lighting a match and running like hell.
And then the theme episodes, like Play It Again Wolfgang, or Once Upon a Time Slip, which is still, I think, one of my favorites of all of the shows.
Yeah.
Were just brilliant. They were brilliant.
David Jason and Terry Scott, as doing the voices of Danger Mouse and Penfold, respectively, were so perfect. They were their I don't think I'm being I don't think I'm saying something that's not accurate here when I say that David and Terry were their generation's Rob Paulson and Maurice LaMarche as Pinky and the Brain. I really feel that way from the bottom of my heart. So that's why my number 2 most favorite British TV show is Danger Mouse.
Speaking of Pinky and the Brain, check out the new video from Postmodern Jukebox.
Oh my gosh. On
YouTube. My number 2.
Picture Pinky and the Brain theme sung by Jessica Rabbit.
Yeah. With a little help from our friends.
Yes.
My number 2 is a show that I knew wouldn't be on your list because you haven't seen enough of it. And I have loved it since I first saw it. It was a companion show to when I was in the late 80s. It would run at 11:30 on Sunday nights after Dave Allen at Large, which I had also been drawn into by an uncle. And I just fell in love with the off-the-wall humor. And it's a shame that more people in America have not seen this show. They only released the last 2 seasons into PBS. And you can get some of the best of on video here in America from the BBC, but the entire series is out on DVD in Britain, so they're lucky. They get the whole thing. But these two gentlemen were just brilliant together, and they were just fantastically funny. My number 2, the two Ronnies. Ronnie Barker, Ronnie Corbett, in a great, hilarious half-hour sketch comedy show. It would open with the two of them doing their newsreader stories, which were just crazy. That would segue into Ronnie Barker's segment with his wordplay, his malapropisms, which would then lead into Ronnie Barker sitting short, tiny little Ronnie Barker sitting there in that gigantic chair, trying to tell a humorous story, but getting distracted with every other thing, and with one of the worst, almost Svengoolie-like punchlines at the end of it was great. And then they'd do a sketch comedy and a sketch together and a musical number, and you were done. And it was like, it's one of the funniest shows ever.
You've shown me a little bit. I've seen a little bit on my own. I want to bring up one of them. I can't remember the actual joke part of it as well, but it was Ronnie Barker was the smaller gentleman, right? No.
Ronnie Corbett is the small one.
Yeah, Ronnie Barker. Sorry, I always do that. He was doing this. One of his things that you mentioned was the newscaster thing. This whole thing was him speaking on behalf of the Society for People Who Can't Pronounce the Letters.
No, that's Ronnie Corbett. That's Ronnie Barker.
Yeah, Ronnie Barker. Okay. Yeah. The whole thing of it, he's the spokesperson on behalf of the Society for the People Who Can't Pronounce the Letter, whichever letter it was. And he goes through this whole thing where he's using all these words that have the letter in it, and it's just achingly funny.
Yeah. Benny Hill did stuff like that, too.
Yeah. That's the stuff I like, is the wordplay.
Barker was fabulous at wordplay. And I mean, he was great, and he wrote most of those himself. I just really liked the entire bit of comedy. They're both gone now. Ronnie Barker died a number of years ago, and Ronnie Corbett passed away a couple of years ago, finally.
Yeah.
They were just brilliant. Oddly enough, the last thing Ronnie Corbett did as a professional, before retiring for a couple of years, he was the announcer on the first season of Ant and Dex Push the Button. I'm like, really? That's all he does is announce stuff? Because he was brilliant. I loved his stories that were just meandering and goofy, and he'd get off track, and I found both of them brilliant, and I wish more people, there's a lot of it on YouTube. Not enough, unfortunately, but it's terrific, and if you ever get a chance to see it, watch it. The two Ronnies, number 2.
Absolutely.
And I think, is it safe to say that number 1 is the same?
I think probably.
Because it has a very, very special meaning for us?
I think you might be tweaking on to something there.
Number
1 on my list of the my top 10 favorite British TV shows is The Tomorrow People.
Yep.
From the 1970s series.
The original series.
Yes, the original series.
Not the 90s series or the god-awful CW abomination.
Let's hear it for unbiasedness! Yay!
I'm sorry, the CW version sucked.
Yeah, I'm really sorry, Mark Pellegrino. You're great as Lucifer, but Jedediah? Dude, I've seen Jedediah.
They changed the entire premise of
you,
the show.
Sir, are no Jedediah.
I swear they didn't, but
no,
they
did. They totally did, because I didn't give a damn about any of those people, so that changed that right there.
I'm sorry. Robbie Amell as a 16-year-old? Were you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
Anyway.
He got held back a lot.
Yeah, no kidding. He's like Miles Teller in Spectacular Now. Anyway.
That was bitchy. Yeah. Created by Roger Price, the Tomorrow People dealt with the idea. It's basically it's very close to, in a lot of ways, the X-Men, Marvel's X-Men, in the idea that these people are.
There's no Professor X.
No, there is no Professor X.
There's Tim instead.
Yeah, there's that difference. There's some other big differences. No yellow spandex, and also. The fact that, let's be honest, the X-Men have a really high body count because of certain people. Logan. And the Tomorrow People can't kill. Not even to save their own lives. So you have these young people, really like, 15, 16 years old, that are the next step in human evolution. And if you think about that, that sounds awesome unless it's happening to you, and then it's scary as hell.
Yeah.
there's so much about this show that means a great deal to me. There's so much about this show that gave me hope. Mm-hmm. It gave me hope as a young person, specifically because I was also at that age when I was like, I am so glad I am not genetically tied to any of you people, or the people around me. And seeing people who were different, and different in a way that they owned, mm-hmm. that meant something. That stuck with me as a, junior high misfit. That completely stuck with me because I was like, if they can make it, I can make it too.
You have to remember the show was the Thames Television's answer to Doctor Who. It was about mm-hmm. kids. Most of the kids were younger, mm-hmm. especially as they went on.
Yeah.
It was a great show. It was well written. Roger Price thought out some really brilliant stuff, mm-hmm. Particularly when they were getting into the middle years. And it was just a show that touched me in many ways because it was original. It was kids trying to make a difference and trying to be not hunted by anybody. Yeah. And it was a great show from beginning to end.
It's really interesting if you look at the Tomorrow People and you look at the way superhero movies have changed mm-hmm. in the last few years, especially toward a character like Superman. I mean, back in the 70s when this show was out, mm-hmm. It would be like Superman shows up to save the day and everybody's like, yay, it's Superman. Now it's like Superman shows up, alien, kill it. It's the whole idea.
Damn you, Frank Miller.
It's the whole idea of the other and the fact that the other has to watch out for all of them.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think is so cool about a show like The Tomorrow People is the fact that you had these kids. Some of them had good family lives, some of them didn't. But they became their own family.
I never really saw the family lives of the first four.
No.
It was only later. Let me really quickly, because we'll end up not getting there. Let me run down the principals on the show. Mm-hmm. Nicholas Young as John, the leader of the group. He's currently got a YouTube channel with his guitar stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Stephen Salmon for the first season as Kenny, the youngest at 11. Sammy Windmill, who was best known at that time for Doctor in the House, right?
I think so, yeah.
As Carol, the lone female. And Peter Von Clark as Stephen Jameson, who was easily the most popular character, except for John, in the entire run of the show. Later on, they would... What?
Nothing.
You don't agree with that?
No, I'm listening to you.
Later on, Elizabeth Adari came aboard as Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
There was Dean Lawrence as Tyso, Mike Holloway as Mike, Misako Koba as Sue Tai, and Nigel Forbes as Andrew.
Yep.
Did I get everybody?
Yeah, you did. And
Plus
Philip Gilbert
as Tim, and also which is their Biotronic computer, and also in person as Tikno and Timus occasionally.
Yeah.
And occasionally guest appearances from Brian Stanyan as Professor Costin, and Ann Kurthoy as Trisha Conway.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great show.
It was a great show.
I loved it, and it
brought us together.
It
did.
I was running a fan club for the show. Kim wrote to me, joined the fan club, bought my fanzines, and we've been together ever since.
Yeah.
And that was almost 30 years ago.
I know.
It seems
That's
really
nuts.
crazy.
That's completely nuts.
And we still
love
talk about it.
Yeah, we still talk about it. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it was also a point in my life. I mean, let's be completely honest here. We're all friends. She
had the hots for John.
Oh, yeah. I was an adolescent.
And he's still very good looking.
I was an adolescent. I was a doe-eyed female teetering on the brink of womanhood and, all that kind of jazz that they tell you in Lifetime movies. And, I was like, ooh, cute guys with English accents, we're staying here. And then I, got into the show and I got into the characters and I cared about the characters. Yeah,
that's what it made. I hadn't found that in a science fiction show since Star Trek.
And I know.
It was really nice.
And it was awesome. And it was also awesome for a change that you had a show dealing with people with these abilities, the Tomorrow People's basic abilities, the 3 T's, teleportation, telekinesis, and telepathy. Mm-hmm. You had people with psychic abilities who, for once, thank whichever deity you believe in, were not being portrayed as dangerous psychotics who can't control their powers.
Although people around them thought of them that way, and they made that clear.
Yeah, they did.
Except for people who got to know them, like Professor Costin.
Right.
So,
absolutely,
it was a great show.
It was.
And I was going to say something else and I forgot what it was.
Oh, sorry.
Not all of the shows are brilliant.
No, well, they can't all be Maseratis.
Into the Unknown is a real clunker. And Roger Price, who created this show, and for them forever, I will say we're not worthy, also came to Canada in 1980 and created a show that would become the basis of an entire network. The legendary, long-running You Can't Do That on Television.
Yep.
And he also revived the show in the 90s, again for Nickelodeon, with an entirely new cast, including Christian Schmid, Kristen Ariza, Christian Tessier, Adam Pearce, and I can't remember the lady who played Jade, and Naomi Harris. And it lasted just 2 seasons, plus the pilot. And it was fun, but it wasn't nearly as good as the original.
It wasn't the same. There was enough different about it that it was like, okay, we made it different, but it was still, you know.
Me. I first knew Trevor Bannister from the Tomorrow People. He played Colonel Masters. I had no idea he was funny until I saw him on Are You Being Served?
I know.
Oh my God, he's one of the most brilliant comedians ever, and he's this really dour.
He's a real SOB on the Tomorrow People, yeah.
And it's like, wow.
Right.
They had a lot of big names on there, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Check it out if you get a chance. It is out on DVD if you can find it here in America. But I'm surprised they haven't put it on Netflix or something yet.
Yeah. Although Nicholas Young, real quick, that he actually did appear on the CW's version of the Tomorrow People. Why did you do that? And they killed off his character, and I was like, I'm just gonna go in the other room and break some stuff. I'll be right back.
I like Greg Berlanti. Greg has done a great job with all the DC stuff.
Yeah.
Him and Julie Plec, I don't want them to ever touch another Tomorrow People property again. Please. It was terrible.
Okie dokie. So much for ever getting invited to lunch. Anyway.
Run them up?
Yes, run them up. Okay, as I mentioned, my honorable mentions are...
Oh, leave those down. This is top 10. We've already done those.
Just top 10, okay.
Yeah.
My number 10, Open All Hours. Number 9, Monty Python's Flying Circus. Number 8, Midsummer Murders. Number 7, Father Brown. Number 6, Are You Being Served? Number 5, Fawlty Towers. Number 4, The Great British Baking Show. Number 3, Keeping Up Appearances. Number 2, Danger Mouse. And my number 1 most favorite British TV show, the 1970s version of The Tomorrow People.
My top 10 from 10 to 1. Number 10, Agatha Christie's Poirot. Number 9, Danger Mouse, the original show. Number 8, The Benny Hill Show. Number 7, Keeping Up Appearances. Number 6, The Avengers, original show. Number 5, Doctor Who, both versions. Number 4, Are You Being Served? Number 3, The Great British Baking Show. Number 2, The Two Ronnies. And number 1, the 1970s version of The Tomorrow People.
All right. I think that list was great, and we would love to hear your list.
And we'd love to hear what you think of this list, and let us know what your favorite British shows are.
Definitely.
And give us an idea for lists, because if we use your idea, you get a prize, and you're going to get on the show, and you're going to get to, on the website, and say, this is credit for you, and link to whatever website or Twitter or whatever you have. And so please send us a letter at frontrow at PNRNetworks.com. Next week. My choice.
Yes. I'm scared.
No, don't be. This will be fun. Our top 10 favorite movies that we think get an unfairly bad reputation.
Okay.
Or unfair, or get they have an unfair bad rap with most movie goers.
Okay. All right. This should be interesting.
Yeah. You understand what I mean?
I understand what you mean.
Okay.
Films that we like that have low scores, like on the IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes or things like that.
Or just other people
say they don't like them.
It's like you don't see what we see in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And everybody can figure out what my number one's going to be already if you've been listening to the show long enough. So it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Don't forget to check out our other shows, Subject Cinema, at subjectcinema.com, also on this same channel. Front Row 5 and 10, every Thursday, starting next week, or on Friday this week. We'll be back. Hopefully on a weekly basis. Let's do it. All right.
Yeah.
Also, my mini shows, Tuesday Digidex and 3 Minute Weekend with the run-ups of the releases on video on Tuesday and theaters on Friday. And Catastrophe Vortex will be back next week, my disaster movie show. Kim has Platinum Rose's Garden, her supernatural show, Ring Around the Rosie, her wrestling show, and her brand new Patreon-only patron show, Kaiju Corner, all about kaiju. If you want that, and you want the other 2 new shows that are premiering this week, Subject Cinema's Freeze Frame and Subject Cinema's Microfocus, you need to be on our Patreon patrons at the $5 level or above, $5 a month. Come on. You're going to get all kinds of great programming that you won't hear unless you are a member. And we really could use your support. We desperately want your support. We need to know people are out there that love us.
Groveling when begging isn't enough.
I'm sorry, Master.
Oh.
Patreon.com/PNRNetworks. And don't forget Eric and Valerie Lyons' Cavebabble at Cavebabble.com and Anthony Lamberti at Aunt B's Nerd Grotto.
Yep. And if you'd like to listen to some dramatic works that we've done, you can take a listen to Manhattan Hammerdown As It Happened.
Our 10th anniversary Cloverfield tribute.
Yep. And our modern update on the H.G. Wells classic, The War of the Worlds.
Our 80th anniversary tribute to the Orson Welles version. And production number 3 is just starting to come into view and should be out in May.
Yep.
Hopefully. If
Cross
I can
your
put together a script.
Cross your fingers.
Yeah.
If you'd like to follow either of us on Twitter, you can follow me at PlatinumRoselle at Twitter.com.
And I'm most likely at eCinemaBoston. I'm also at eCinemaOne and TKR Online for my music fans at the KirkhamReport.com. Anything else?
I think that's it.
We'll see you next week with more stuff.
And we hope that we can count on you to come back and help us count up another list here on Front Row 5 and 10. I'm Kim Brown.
I'm TC Kirkham.
Bye now. Bye.
You've been listening to Front Row 5 and 10 with Kim Brown and TC Kirkham.
Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.
PNR.